Imperial Lounge presents an icon.
Reggae dancehall by the beach. To be held at Imperial Lounge, 2 to 14 High Street, Margate Seafront, Kent, CT9 180. To be held on the first Saturday of each month. Your host DJ Matt. Also rotating DJs, Roddy Boone, DJ Happy,
and Younger General.
Doors open 8 p.m. till late. Free entry all night. Music policy, reggae, dancehall, and a touch of soul. On the first Saturday of each month. Reggae dancehall by the beach. At the Imperial Lounge Margate. Do remember, you can also get VIP and Shisha booking. More info on the World Jam Global website. That's www.worldjamglobal.com. Also www.imperialloungemargate.co.uk.
See you there.
It's the right thing you doing. Rebellious like Malcolm. 1, 2, 3, swing it.
Do you have an old sound tape or your favorite cassette tape that you want converted to CD or MP3 format? Do you need a demo CD, radio ad, a DJ, or even a sound system for your wedding, birthday, or special occasion? Then why not get in contact with KTR Records on 07931 152 448, or check out our website on www.ktrrecords.com. We have been in business since 2004 and also undertake community projects. So for your remixes, doublets and all your sound editing needs, why not contact KTR Records, official sponsor of World Jam Global Radio. KTR Records, coming your way. Do you like music like this?
Great music all the time.
Or like this?
The music you love.
Maybe this.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
Or life check like this.
Especially where human life is concerned. Surely, sooner or later, people will realize that lives actually matter.
Then you're in the right place. Keep it locked to World Jam Global, where music is harmony.
Music 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, you're a World Jam. Hotter than them.
See live schedule.
You see, it's here. You see. New feature coming from World Jam Global Radio in 2018. World Jam Global Top 10. To vote for your favorite artist, go to twitter.com/World Jam Global or facebook.com/World Jam Global. So pick the right track where you want to have in your car, at your house, a rock. At them.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Just stand by. We've got another explosive show coming up for you in just a few moments' time. My name is Kervin Julian. This is Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio, going out live across the world.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Back in the day, I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival. It was do or die. I had too many rivals. I was too young and foolish to stay in school. I learned my lessons in the street. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been.
I want to say a big good evening going out to, or a big afternoon going out to Yolanda McNair, especially Royce Eckley. I see ya.
Gangsta life is too short to spend it all in jail.
We've got
with this living
Anne-Marie Grant.
Did my time. I paid for
Marissa Barrera. We're still trying to get hold of Christina Murphy, who's struggling to get on the line. But she's trying very hard, so we're being very patient.
For my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Now, as we said in the link, doesn't matter what kind of a lifestyle that you've lived, doesn't matter what kind of a past that you've had, Everybody deserves to die with dignity. And today we're going to be talking to two people who've lost a very close loved one. Both of them have lost their brothers.
I'm not proud of what I had to do.
In the most terrible and horrific way.
I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since
I'm going to leave them to tell the story.
I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb. My brain was so numb. I was a real force.
But we look forward to hearing from Anne-Marie and Marissa in just a very few short moments.
Meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'd chew you up and spit you.
In the meantime, please feel free to share this link on all platforms, on all social media platforms. Make sure that there's no hiding place for the corruption that goes within law enforcement and the prosecutorial service, or the prison service for that matter.
Pay for my crime.
Great show we did last week with Yolanda McNair, Jerry Summers, Greg Greer, Jonathan Newton.
Already did my time. Pay for my crime. Already did my time. Pay for my crime.
We do have a follow-up show coming up next week, where we look to announce the launch of a coalition,
already did my time.
A reform of the police Bill of Rights and
trying to get this
all the other issues that you suffer with,
life on track,
struggle with, fights against
again
when dealing with the loss of your loved ones
in the pen
at the hands
world
of those who are paid to serve and protect.
I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged.
Big shout out to my dear friend Ronnie Canada.
Gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster life.
This is actually Ronnie singing live on this track that he's released just for me.
Cope with this living hell.
Track entitled Paid for My Crime.
My time. I paid for my crime.
Written and sung by the man himself, dear friend.
Did my
Hi Maria Tolley in Cardiff.
already
I'd like to say a big hello to all of you right across the world who are listening, tuning in.
already
Whether you're here for the first time or you are our regular listeners and audience.
already did my time.
We've got a great show lined up for you. Explosive, challenging, thought-provoking,
I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high.
and significantly
I'm not proud.
so repetitively recurrent
Story to you.
across the United States of America.
I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten.
Don't forget you can follow us live on www.worldjamglobalradio.com.
Numb, I was a real force.
Follow me live on World Jam Global Radio Facebook, or Kervin Julian Facebook, or Issues Today Facebook,
Schwarzenegger, I'd shoot you up
or any of the
real alligator.
police brutality related social media platforms that are available.
For my crime,
You'll find that I'm affiliated to most,
already did.
associated with most.
Paid for my crime, already did my time.
The opening statements are going on right now. He could be facing life in prison.
By the way, just to let you know that Ronnie was one of the original members of the Blue Notes from Howell Melvin and the Blue Notes. That's the lead vocalist on this track, exclusively for Dr. Feelgood, he says. That's my other DJ name, or when I play my gospel. Don't forget you can catch that tomorrow morning.
Yes, I am.
But Ronnie is performing tonight with the Blue Notes. I'm not exactly sure where, but if you follow the thread on my page, you'll be able to see where Ronnie's performing tonight.
Already did my time.
But this show's not about music, we're talking about lives. Lives that matter to those who've lost.
In heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come
And we've been doing this for nearly 4 years now,
as it is in heaven.
and every story is just as important as the other,
And forgive us our
because these lives really do matter.
trespass against us.
Marissa Barrera, Anne-Marie Grant, coming up in just a few short moments.
It's the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Paper my crown, paper my crown, paper my crown, paper my crown.
Came close to cancelling the show today as I ended up with no internet this morning.
Those drive-by
Almost 5 hours I had no internet. But God has a way of making a way where man can't see no way.
without sin.
And my trust is totally in him. So here we are.
I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my...
One in Canada wants you to know he's performing in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Again, this is my...
Where the original Blue Notes from Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes.
Worldwide.
Teddy Pendergrass Flame. If you don't know me by now,
Each other.
wake up everybody. Big tracks from way back then. Well, I've got Anne-Marie Grant and Marissa Barrera coming up in just a moment. Well, I do have a message from Christina, who's still trying to get her Skype either online or trying to get it downloaded. And hopefully, if she does manage to get that sorted, we're going to get her live on here at some point. But in the meantime, I still have with me Anne-Marie Grant and Marissa Barrera, who both lost loved ones in a most horrific way. And we're about to find out why. First and foremost, let me introduce you to Anne-Marie Grant. Hi, Anne-Marie.
Hi, Kervin.
Hi. Listen, thank you for trusting us to share your story. Please just introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them who you are and who your loved one is, and let's
Sure.
Go ahead.
My name is Anne-Marie Grant. I'm the sister of Thomas Purdy. He was 38 years old, and he was killed by the police in Reno, Nevada, in October 2015 during a mental health crisis.
Wow. You know, we've had so many struggles. We've heard so many stories of people who have lost a loved one while going through a mental health crisis, where the law enforcement seems to really struggle to have some sort of a way of approaching this in an appropriate manner. Apart from supporting your brother or trying to get justice for your brother, are you involved in anything else, Anne-Marie?
So I'm 38 years old, and I have a 17-year-old son that I actively take care of. He keeps me busy, and I work. And there's a local mass action against police brutality that I'm a member of here. When they get together and whenever they have protests or gathering, I join them. But if you're asking about other hobbies, I mean, this is it has consumed my life, so...
We tend to find with most people that we do communicate with, we've had on the show, or we have conversations with, once they've lost a loved one in this sort of way, it tends to take over their whole life. You just ask Cephas Johnson, Uncle Bobby, and he'll tell you how long he's been doing this thing. And you speak to other people like Yolanda McNair and the Donna Hayeses of this world, and you'll find out just how long they've been doing this thing. It will consume you, and it will take up a lot of your time and your life and resources. But justice for your loved one is what it's about, and we're going to be hearing a little bit more about Thomas as the show progresses. So bear with us. We'll be coming back to you very shortly. I'd like to introduce you to my next guest. That's Marissa Barrera, who also lost a brother in a most horrific way. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Marissa, to the audience and let them know who you are, what you do, and how you live.
Hi, my name's Marissa Barrera, and I'm from Woodland, California. My brother, or actually, I'm sorry, I'm telling about myself. Yeah, I'm also a mother like Anne-Marie, so that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, working, taking care of my son. And like Anne-Marie, I've emerged myself into this as well. So spend a lot of time going to local actions and protests. When we hear of new ones in the area, we go out and reach out to the families. So I've been across California before to meet different families, and I do share a lot online as well to help, spread awareness and spread the truth and raise awareness to share my brother's story, but also other people's stories and what's going on.
Well, that's great work. And again, just like we said about Anne-Marie, once you have a family member or a loved one who's taken in this sort of horrific way, it's very difficult to not allow it to consume you or take over what you do and how you live, because at the end of the day, what you're looking for is justice, which is what you seem to have in common with a lot of people who we have on this show on a regular basis. We want to be talking about how they died in a while, but I think it's very important that we give our audience an opportunity to learn just a little bit more about who these individuals were and how they lived. So while we're talking to you, Marissa, we'll come back to you in a very short while, Anne-Marie. Tell us a little bit about Michael. What was he like? I mean, obviously, was he your older brother? Was he your younger brother? And what was your relationship like?
Michael, he was my older brother. He was 2 years older than me, so we grew up very close. I have another older brother, but me and Michael were closest in age. He was 30 years old when he was killed. He was killed by Woodland Police Department officers on February 8th of 2017. And Michael was awesome, big brother. Like, I looked through our, messages from before, just, pictures and stuff like that. He just always looked out for little sis. I was his baby sister. Michael was, his personality, he was like goofy, very goofy, like the class clown type of guy. Something that I really admire, and especially more now that when I look back about my brother, he was the type that he didn't judge people or care where people came from. Like, if he seen someone alone, like sitting there alone, or people looking sad, or even like homeless people, he would, go up and talk to them, like, hey, just like, he was just very friendly and outgoing, a lot more than me. I was more quiet and, kind of shy, but he was very outgoing. My brother, he has 2 daughters that he left behind. His oldest daughter, her name is Michelle, and she's 12 years old now. She just started junior high. And then his baby girl is only 1 year old, and he never got the chance to meet her because he was killed when she was 4 months. Her mother was 4 months pregnant. So that was really hard. He was a very hands-on dad. He would take his daughter, and he would, like, the picture, that's my baby boy. That's my son, the one that you're showing of Michael. And I am a single mother. So Michael, he would go out of his way to do more for my son. Like, he was just really proud of our kids. And he could not wait to have Michaela, the baby girl. He was very happy. He was very happy and excited. He was going to be getting married sometime in the next year. So there were a lot of things going on, but.
Can I just ask you one question before we switch on to Anne-Marie? And we're going to be going to, obviously, because there's 2 of you, we will be going backwards and forwards, and we'll try and keep everybody in track with the storyline. But was Michael known to the police? Did he have a long criminal record? Was he trouble with the police?
Michael had gotten, like I said, he was 30 years old. He had gotten in trouble back when he was, I think, 18. He took care of it. He moved on. I think the only things he had was maybe a couple, like, little minor traffic things in the last few years, like several years. So there was nothing recently. I think a lot of people have experienced, some type of trouble with the police at some point. And a lot of people move forward. My brother moved forward from that.
Well, again, so at the point that the police took his life, or he lost his life, he wasn't in active criminal activity.
No, he was not.
Okay, that's even if he was, that wouldn't have given anybody the right. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to make that point, because I think sometimes it's so easy for people who are not used to dealing with police in certain ways to think, well, for him to have been manhandled, roughed up, or whatever, he must have been a bit of a troublemaker. They must have had some sort of a standing relationship. They must have had, you know what I mean? People don't seem to get it.
Yes, and that's what, after it's been over, almost 2 years for us. And that's what I've noticed, with just like with my brother, the media reports, I had literally walked away from the cops and they told me a story, which, and then they posted their next media reports, which was totally opposite. But that's what I've learned that they do. This is what I've been told before. They kill the victims twice. First, they kill them physically, then they kill them off their character with the media's lies. And I've found that to be true with every single story I've came across.
And that's the unfortunate thing. Anne-Marie, tell us a little bit about Thomas, please. Especially how he was as a brother, how you guys grew up together, etc.
Sure. So Thomas was 38 years old when he was killed in Reno. I'm actually from Boston. I live in Boston. And he was less than 30 days from his 39th birthday. But growing up, Thomas always struggled with mental illness his whole life. But growing up, he was a protective brother. I wouldn't say he wasn't loud. He was like a very quiet, reserved person. But whenever he would call to check in on my son, he would always just because my son had problems with people picking on him, he would always check in and make sure that nobody was giving him a hard time. He was always protective of his nieces. I have a niece with cerebral palsy. And I feel like that's when the time when Thomas was able to use his voice, because like I said, he was a quiet person when it came to protecting his family. Like we were at a water park and this lady was staring at my niece, and it obviously made my niece uncomfortable. But my brother right away, said, is there something you want to ask? Why are you looking at her? Like, he wasn't being nasty, but willing to educate them. But Thomas had many hobbies. He enjoyed golfing, swimming, fishing. He was an avid skier. He went to Colorado to go skiing. I think the thing my brother was most proud of was the fact that he worked for the even though it was a short time, he worked for the MBTA, which is the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, which is our railway and bus system in the Boston area. So he did work at some point. His biggest hobby in the end, towards the end of his life, was gambling, which when we talk about that later, that kind of where the incident happened with my brother, actually, his mental health crisis started in a casino he was a guest at. But as far as hobbies and whatnot, he also enjoyed fixing electronics. He was good at it. It was scary when he would take it apart when it was yours and you owned it and you weren't quite sure if it was going to get back working together, but somehow he always managed to get it going. That always surprised me, just how he never took any electrical classes or anything like that, but just he was able to pick things up like that. Even though he did have a learning disability. Growing up, he was in special education classes and stuff like that.
Was Thomas having regular encounters with law enforcement at the time that he lost his life?
No. And I will say any encounter, Thomas did have encounters with the police, but anytime it was always due to his mental issues. And usually it was a family member calling to get him taken to the hospital, and what they would do was arrest him. And he would get charges. And once you're caught up in the system, he wasn't at the time of his death involved in the legal system, but in his younger years, like disturbing the peace charges when we just wanted him taken to a hospital, stuff like that. I don't believe he was ever convicted of anything, though.
So he wasn't somebody who was known to the police, causing problems with the police, having regular run-ins with the police. He wasn't the type of person that you would consider to be a real pain or thorn in the side, where police would have been sort of like, I'm not even trying. Here's the thing.
No, he wasn't out committing any type of criminal charges. He wasn't assaulting people. He wasn't stealing things. He wasn't doing anything like that, no.
Just for the for the purpose of our listeners, I'm even trying to give the police a platform, not justification, I suppose, just trying to give the audience an understanding. Because I think again, as I said when I was talking to Marissa, so many people misunderstand some of these cases that we talk about and assume that the individual must have been a pain in the neck, constantly in the police radar, getting arrested all the time, resisting arrest, wanting to fight, troublemaker, that kind of thing, living a life of criminal activity. But in all the cases that I've been dealing with over the past 4 years, I've actually not found that to be the case. In fact, almost every single one of them that we have dealt with on these shows are people that have no criminal history, no relationship with local law enforcement, and actually have no reason to be a thorn in anybody's side, even their family members. And that's the most important thing. Irrespective of whatever the media and the police want to portray your brothers as, they were your loved ones. They were your brothers. They belonged to somebody's family. And at the very least, they need to be able to die with dignity. Even if they've been killed wrongfully, they still need to die with dignity. You know what I mean?
That's why I speak out. So many people are conditioned by the media, and the media only reports what the police are telling them. I mean, just from reading a 3-paragraph article that came out from one of the local newspapers, and then they put it on social media, and people immediately, like you said, oh, we must have been a criminal. Oh, another criminal dead, not even, and they're just so conditioned to believe that everything the police tells them is the truth, and it's far from it.
Yeah. So, Anne-Marie, your brother was killed while trying to be detained. Do you want to just tell us what was taking place as far as you know it?
Okay, so my brother was a guest at the Pepper Mill Casino in Reno, and he was on the casino floor and approached security guards and told them that he needed help. Somebody was trying to kill him. He then sat in between 2 slot machines, and this is all on video. It's available online if anybody wants to watch it. But the security, then 3 security, stand in front of him while he's in between the slot machines, and you can see him looking around, and he points behind them, and they all look behind them. And what was actually happening was he was saying to them, there's a guy with a gun. Don't you see them? Don't you see them? They're trying to kill me. So they make him get up. He stands up in between the slot machines, his head quick. You could tell he was extremely paranoid. His head turned left, right, about 1,000,000 miles an hour, like looking around. And then they proceed to escort him out. He falls down on the ground right near the doors, and one of the security guards actually picks him up by his neck and slams him out head first, using his head out the doors of the casino. So then my brother sat down outside of the casino, and he was looking around, and then security came out, and he got up and he started to walk, and they followed him, and he tried to climb under one of the vehicles. This was in the valet area of the casino at this point. He tried to climb under one of the vehicles to escape whoever in his mind he legitimately thought was trying to kill him. And the security guards then, one of them grabs him by the leg and drags him out from under the car and pulls him into the oncoming there was a car coming. He almost ran my brother over. Then the security guards get him up and they escort him off the property. And my brother then started walking back onto the sidewalk in front of the casino. And at that point, they said that they trespassed him. Conveniently, they brought him to the area outside the casino where there were no videos at that point that covered that area where they had him detained at that point. I know somebody that worked there previously, and they said that was done intentionally. So at that point, they manually put my brother in a hog tie. They sat him on the stairs, and he tried to get away, not from them, but he said, those people are trying to get me, they're going to shoot me, and he tried to scoot up the stairs. So at that point, the security guards grab him by his feet and just drag him down the stairs, and his head hit off the stairs. It's in the reports from another security guard, because like I said, that part wasn't on video. And then they manually put him in the hog tie position. They didn't actually have... They had handcuffs. They handcuffed him, and then they crossed his legs, and someone laid on his legs and the other 2 on his shoulder area on each side. At that point, they said that at that point, they got his wallet out, and Reno police showed up, and at that very moment, they realized he was a guest at the casino. So Reno PD showed up. Reno PD put him in a hog tie. This is all on video. The only thing Reno PD alleges, which I don't see it on the video, is that my brother Thomas, when they put him up against the police cruiser, that he kicked his leg back at them. And so at that point, they put him on the ground and put him in a hog tie. And for 15 minutes at the pepper mill, rather than turn him over on his side, an officer filled out paperwork while the other one kept Thomas in the hog tie, face down with his knee in his back. They then put him in the cruiser. My brother's telling them that he can't breathe. They get him up to the jail, and they take him out of the cruiser, and they tighten the hog tie on him. They make it even tighter. They bring out a mega mover, it's called. It's like this big tarp, and they put him on it and carried him into the jail. And this is all on video too. And then they have him in the Sally port of the jail, and they do bring the nurse in, and she the whole time he's saying, I can't breathe, you guys are gonna kill me. She says, sir, why do you need an ambulance? I had major lung surgery, I can't breathe. They say that my brother was resisting the whole time that they had him in the hog tie. My brother was trying to breathe. It puts your body almost like in an accordion shape, if you can visualize that, so that your chest is actually like compressed towards your knees. And so he was trying to straighten his body out to expand his diaphragm, is what I see in the video. And then a little bit of like spit comes out of his mouth as he's talking, and an officer immediately starts pushing his hand into my brother's head. This is still while he's hogtied and begging that he can't breathe and needs an ambulance, they're going to kill him. The sergeant did tell the officer to lay off, to stop doing that to his head. At that point, they talk about taking the hog tie off of him. It was clear from the video that the jail, the staff, the deputies there definitely were not trained in the use of a hog tie, how to get it off somebody. At that point, they should have cut it off him when they couldn't get it off him. They decide that they're going to move him into a cell, still hog-tied. They put him on the mega mover again, face down. He's screaming, ow, ow, you're going to kill me. I can't breathe. They bring him in the cell. They put him face down, and then all four of them got on top of him, one on his legs, two in his neck, shoulder area, and I'm not sure where the other one was, but there were four of them total holding him down, face down. And the last thing he said was, okay, okay, and that was it. They kept, and then as he's laying there dead, they're saying, relax, partner, good, just relax, keep relaxing. And meanwhile, he's totally, unresponsive. And then they finally get the hog tie off, and they all back out of the cell. It's almost, it's ridiculous. One of them almost trips over his own feet, like my brother was that big of a threat, like trying to get out of the cell. They shut the door, and the video stops. I don't know how long that door was shut for. I don't know how long it was before the camera turns back on, but at some point, they then open the door to the cell, and my brother is still face down, hands behind his back, legs still up, and hasn't moved from the position they left him in. They turn him over, and they just kind of, do that chest rub. The male nurse comes in. They all just kind of stare at him, and they told us they started CPR right away. They didn't start CPR for 10 minutes, and the hospital reports say, that's why he had irreversible brain damage, because he went without CPR and oxygen for so long.
Wow. I mean, we're gonna go back into that very shortly, but I must tell you, I've been working very hard in the background because we've been trying to get Christina on the call, and we now have Christina on the line.
Awesome.
So let's just try and get her in, Marissa. If you stand by a minute, let's just do an introduction with Christina. I do have Christina Murphy, I believe. Hi, Christina. Hello, Christina.
Hey, I can barely hear you. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to figure this out still.
We can hear you clearly. Have you got your headphones on? That's for starters.
Hold on.
While you're trying to
hold on one second. I'm so sorry.
while you try to figure yourself out, let's just flip over to Marissa if we can very quickly. Marissa, in hearing Anne-Marie tell her story, which is slightly different to yours, but under very similar circumstances, because there's a mental health related aspect to Michael as well, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So tell us in your words, what was actually happening the day that Michael lost his life?
You know what? A lot is still left in the gray for us, as there's a lot of things we don't know. But I'll just share kind of from my perspective how I came upon it that day and what I do know. So I was at work that day. I worked in a different town, and then I was on my lunch break, and my mom called me, and she was like, "Hey, we need." Someone called her from the hospital, and it wasn't the officers. It's someone that recognized my brother, and then I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna leave. So basically, when I got there, I learned that my brother he was dead, and he was so what they had told us is just that there was some kind of altercation. It didn't happen at his home, and it happened in someone's yard or something, and it was just kind of very vague. But while we were at the hospital, waiting to see him, they had promised my mom, like, you can see him. We just got, like, the nurses tried to walk her into the room. The doctor tried to take her, the chaplain, but the cops stopped her. And they ended up not letting her see the body or identify him at all. But in the meantime, I had heard that cops were at his house. So I was like, why are they at his home if it didn't even happen there? So I went there to where he lived, and I had his keys too. I had a key to his house, and I tried to go into his house, and I got chased down by officers from the Woodland Police Department. They told me that they couldn't let me in, that it was blocked off, and I questioned them, like, why? If it didn't happen here, you have no business here. They basically, I was with my brother's fiance, who was very pregnant at the time too, and they threatened to arrest us, and they scooted us off. I tried to watch from a distance, but they made us leave. What those officers initially told us was that it didn't happen there. No officers had been there. Nothing happened at his home at all. That it happened, like, it was not even a mile away. It was about 3/4 of a mile. So then fast forward to later in the evening, when we hear from the sergeant, who is supposed to be the one to give the family answers and tell us what he can. And he had told me that it started at my brother's home. So we still don't know why they went to his home at all. Like, we don't know why they went to his apartment. That started there, that something happened that led into a foot chase. And my brother was unarmed, and that it was my brother against a lot of officers. So that's how he worded it to me, and I repeated it, and I was recording the officers during these interactions as well. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that my brother, you guys came to his home, you can't tell me why. My brother was unarmed, and it was between him and a lot of officers. How could a lot of officers not, like, how could, even if there was something to detain him, how could you guys not like detain him without killing him, an unarmed man? And he just said, like, basically, I don't know. That's all he knows. So then they encouraged us to go home, which my family lived just like right there, right next to him. So we went there, and then it was like 10 or 15 minutes after we walked away from these officers, that on the local newspaper, the local news for our town, it's a small town in Woodland, they posted this horrible story about my brother. And they're saying all this crazy stuff, that there was some naked man running around, flashing people, breaking into cars. They named 3 different weapons that he was supposedly holding. They said he had a golf club, a knife, and scissors. And it was just this ridiculous story. So I was like, what the heck? I was like, this officer just told me a completely different story. Well, that was the first report, and it ended up not being true. And but what I do know is where it ended. It happened to be across the street from one of the officers' homes, which I found to be very strange. And it happened in an older gentleman's yard, where my brother, and they basically, from what I've read too in some of the reports, And from what I went around talking to different witnesses and knocking on doors, trying to get, some answers. But there is similarities to Thomas. Like he was like saying he couldn't breathe also. Basically, when they grabbed my brother, he didn't have any weapons on him. And I heard this directly from the witness who's seen. And they somehow got my brother. My brother was trying to tell them, because they already had his guns pulled out on them. He said, put that down. Like, why are you have a gun on me? And like, he was scared, And then somehow they got him. There's 5 officers that got him down. They had him face down in the mud. And that day it wasn't raining, but it was, misty day. So they had him face down in the mud, and all these officers on top of him. And I know they beat him, just like they used the batons, I'm assuming. And they say he was tasered 4 times. I'm not like, I don't totally know what to believe with the police reports. Like, I don't know if there could be more. I don't know if there could be less because of how many lives we've experienced already. But from what they claim is that they tasered him 4 times. There's 5 officers on top of him that supposedly they tied his legs at, how tight also. And then their claim is that supposedly, because there was 4 guys and 1 female, and the female is like 4 feet, like 11 maybe. She's tiny, like she's super tiny. And their claim in the reports is that supposedly that when all the cops walked away, that only the girl was left trying to get his feet together, which I don't believe. Like, these officers, I don't believe they're going to walk away from a struggling man and leave only the female to take care of him. It's just not believable.
It just doesn't make sense, does it?
It doesn't at all, And so they're saying that he kicked out, which, I know Emery mentioned that also, like supposedly he was kicking, but supposedly that she but at this time and this is what I heard also from the witness, is that he was handcuffed at this time, even when he got tasered. So supposedly he kicked out, and then that Officer Wright did know my brother from prior. There is something that, like, he knew who my brother was before, and he didn't like my brother, but they claimed that Officer Wright, that the officers got back on top of him, and that supposedly Officer Wright put just enough pressure, right knee into his back, just like Thomas, and that my brother was saying, I can't breathe. And then my brother also said, like, who I am, like, because he knew Officer Wright, and that's why we felt like it was intentional at that point. But so he's caught on, supposedly he was saying, I can't breathe. Then we have the female officer, Hannah Gray. She's saying, yes, you can. If you could talk, you could breathe. And then with not even a minute later, it was seconds later, then he was dead. And they say he started foaming at the mouth. So they're trying to say that he died from the taser, but I believe it was ultimately the suffocation, not being able to breathe. And then, it could be a combination, because also, so that happened. And then, it's just like how I mentioned earlier, they didn't let us see the body until 5 days later. So we had to really, we were calling, we'd never been through this. We were trying to, we knew we had, the next of kin had the right to identify the body, to see my brother. And, it was very important to my mom and my dad, but they didn't let us until 5 days later. We had to get him switched to a different funeral home. There was just a lot of weird stuff. And at that point, when we finally got to see him, his forehead had a metal plate in his skull. And I had specifically told them, do not change anything on his body. You guys are not to do any work. And so there's some point between those 5 days when they were dangling my brother's body away from us, that they did work on him. And in my community, I went to Facebook. There's a community group to ask about these, the other funeral home that we originally took him to. And a lot of people are like, people that had worked there contact me, like, get him out of there, because they're very close to the police officers, and they know how to, they are able to change bodies, to repair them, to do work. So that is something that I believe, I know for a fact, because the second funeral home we had him at, he couldn't look us in the eyes when he got the body. And we asked him, is that normal? Like, why is there that in his head? He's like, that's not normal. But, he didn't have answers for us. But I do know that they changed my brother's body. And then, into the reports that they let out into the media, they claimed that my brother's body had no physical damage. So then, you know, that's their way of making the community think that, oh, he just died from the taser and that he was, you know, doing bad stuff and that he deserved it.
So let's just rewind a minute, because I do want to introduce Christina very shortly, and I'm hoping that she's going to be ready by the time I get to her. But looking at the article that I'm reading in a minute, it says filed in the Eastern District Court of California this week, which obviously would have been when this was reported on the 17th of February 2018, right? It says the wrongful death case alleges that multiple Woodland police officers used unreasonable and excessive force when apprehending Barrera on February the 8th in 2017 by deliberately beating, excessively restraining, tasing and untimely killing Barrera when he had not committed any crime, was unarmed, did not pose any threat, and that the defendant, City of Woodland and its officers, knew or should have known that the descendant was suffering from a mental or psychological disability. Now, for me, the first answer I would need before I did anything was I'd want to know, why were they at my brother's house? Has nobody ever answered as to why they arrived at his house in the first place? Was it a complaint? Was it what was their reason for being there?
So, you know, that's something that still kills me to this day. And they still don't give us the reason. The officers, you know, they released their reasonings. They're saying they got complaints. Like, they stick with they're saying they got complaints about my brother. But, like, my brother lived in those apartment complex, and I had lived there before, too, for many years. The management, her office is right by my brother's home. So when I went, my brother was killed before 1 p.m. So when I went over there, I talked to her at 3 p.m. and I told her, do you know that the cops killed my brother? And she was like, oh my God, no, she had no idea. And these are a kind of an apartment complex. If there's a cop there, everybody's going to be outside, or they're going to be contacting management, asking what happened. You know, people not just being nosy, but being concerned because they live there. She had not gotten any calls that day. If cops would have had a complaint in her apartment, she would have known it. So she always thought that was very, very shady too. But we have never been. And that's my thing too, is that the cops, like from the beginning, the first cops I spoke with told me it happened somewhere else. And then the next one said it happened here. And then they can't give us a reason why it happened. But I mean, my brother had already felt like they were already like harassing him before. And I know it sounds crazy, but you know, with all these cases that I've heard and that I know, like my brother had said, he had sent a text message to his fiance, and he's like, they're going to kill me today, because he had felt that already. But all I know is that my brother was in his home when they I feel like hunted him out. Like, why were they in his home? Because when we did eventually, they ended up getting a warrant by nighttime. They literally went into my brother's home for less than 20 minutes. They tore the place up. They absolutely tore it up. I had a friend watching just around the corner, and he called me as soon as they left. I'm like, they left that quick? You know, they waited 10 hours just to leave that quick. But they tore his house up. And then, I don't know. And then I told, because the officers too, when I had walked up, I told him, has any officers been in there? And he specifically said, no law enforcement has been in there. I can guarantee that. And then, so I have that on video too. And then I asked, when we were there later in the evening, the officer, Joshua Armaso, he totally lied, because when he did get the warrant, he's like, well, I'm just going to let you guys know that we were in there. I was like, wait, earlier you said you weren't. You never went in. He's like, I didn't say that. And I said, I repeated his exact words. And I said, you said that. So why are you lying? And he said, well, that was probably a misstatement. We had to go in to salvage the apartment. He was claiming that a pipe broke in there. And it wasn't true. There was no water in there. So I know they were in my brother's home. And, you know, I don't know what happened. I don't know if I'll ever know.
Here's the thing for me, Marissa. It states in the story, and you've said it, that multiple police officers attended your brother's home. So I'm looking at two options. Either there must have been one hell of a disturbance for there to be that many officers responding, or they knew that he was suffering with mental health related issues, considered that to be a difficult thing to manage, and sent the appropriate amount of officer that they felt would be able to handle it while safeguarding your brother's well-being. Would that be a fair assessment?
I mean, that would be fair. But the other thing that I forgot to mention is, so like I said, I went to witnesses, I went and talked to people. Like, I went around talking to anybody that I could, and I did see, I got surveillance from the apartment complex. So there was not, it was, I seen my brother just moments before he died. I seen him walking out of, the only video camera I was unable, that was supposedly not working in the apartments was the one that was right by his home that would have showed it. But I seen some that showed from a distance, and I seen my brother. There was no cops by him, not while he was in the apartments. Like, he was looking around, like maybe someone was like, I don't know. All I know is that when I see my brother before he went on the before he ran from them, there was no cops in the apartment. Like, so it's confusing to me.
Yeah. So here's the thing: either there was a tremendous disturbance, and that's the point I'm trying to make, and I'm trying to support you with this, Marissa. So really think about what I'm saying here. Either there was a tremendous disturbance at the apartments where your brother was residing, right? Or they were aware of his mental health disability and sent out what they believed to be the appropriate officers that could safely manage and safeguard his well-being. For me, for the amount of officers that attended, right, those would be the two logical explanations law enforcement could offer as to why so many people were at your brother's apartment. So if it was A, which is there was a tremendous interference, commotion, confusion, riotous behavior going on, then where is the evidence of that behavior, and where are the witnesses to suggest that such a thing was going on, that they had to call the police in response? That was issue number one. And secondly, if it was that they were aware, because you've said it, that they were either aware or they should have been aware that your brother suffered from a mental health related issue. So if they sent the appropriate amount of officers that they believed they deemed necessary to cope with your brother and safeguard his well-being, then how did it all go so wrong? Because at the end of the day, your brother's well-being wasn't safeguarded. He ended up dead. And secondly, there is no evidence of any great commotion, confusion taking place that justified the 4 officers taking place. So my question to you is, what are you pursuing as the reason why the officers? Because you need an answer. The officers not saying why they went to his apartment in the first place, that has to be challenged, because then we can start looking at motive. Because until we ascertain what they are recording as the reason for them to attend his apartment, it's impossible for us to start tying up the neighbor who was the police officer who lived across the road. Because I'm with you on this. There seems to be another agenda going on here, but we need to nail it down. So you need to, whatever, if you've got a solicitor, and I'm quite sure we've got some people on the line or some people who are on the page who are listening to the show who are quite able to guide you and give you direction as to where you go next. But for me, one of your first ports of call is to try and ascertain why they attended your brother's address in the first place. You need to know that, because it's quite right that if they were aware that your brother suffered from mental health related issues, they would send enough officers out there in order for them to be able to subdue him, cuff him or whatever. But you'd still need to know why they were sent out there. And I think Yolanda McNair is Freedom of Information Act's the alleged 911 call. Okay, so that's what you need to be looking at. So I want you to think about that, because we're going to come back to that in a minute. What I am hoping, because believe you me, this is horrific. The way that your brother has been treated, and in the stories that I'm reading, is absolutely horrific. And also the way that Anne-Marie's brother was treated, that was also horrific. our next guest that we've got, she's been patiently waiting in the wings as she's got her headphones together and got her sound pieces all sorted out. And I'm hoping that I'm ready to go live to Christina Murphy, because on this occasion, we're not dealing with a brother. I believe it's a husband or an ex-husband. And he was also tasered. Is that correct, Christina?
Yes, that's correct.
But before we talk about how your brother died, tell us your husband. Tell us a little bit about him. How long had you known him? In fact, introduce yourself to us first. Who are you? How long you've been married? How long you known him? And then tell us a little bit about Christopher before we move on to how he died.
My name is Christina, and I met Chris in 1997. We began dating in 1998 and ended up being married in 2005. So pretty long relationship. We were separated in, I would say, 2009. But we actually remained pretty close. He was a really good guy. Good to his kids. We have 3 children together. They're 11, 14, and 15. He was a hard worker. He helped build the Bay Bridge. A very a family guy when it came to his kids and taking care of what needed to be taken care of.
Wow. Okay. So sorry, can you say that again? How long had you known him?
Since 1997.
Okay. And how long were you two married?
Well, we were married in 2005.
Do you want to tell us about the day that Christopher lost his life? What could you just tell us about how the day started?
I was working, and I know I missed several phone calls from him that day. So when I got off work, I called him back, and I remember it was pouring down rain. He wanted to see the kids, and I had just recently been in a car accident, so I couldn't drive them. So I was waiting for my significant other to get home, and Chris, he was just very adamant about seeing his kids. It was a little more pushy that day. I know my daughter was down the street from his house, and so I told him that, you can go over there and get her. And then he was having an argument with his girlfriend, so I suggested that maybe my daughter not go over there. And so I went and picked my daughter up, and that was the last I heard from him. I mean, when I talked to him, he seemed fine on the phone. He didn't seem like stressed out or anything like that. The next day, I got a call from his mom, and she told me that he died. I don't know why the police called his mom. She's all the way in Oregon. He had a driver's license on him. They could have just went to his address, but they went a roundabout way of getting a hold of everybody, which was odd to me.
Wow. It's probably, I suppose I've got to try and find the right and appropriate words, because it sounds like you'd moved on from him. You was in another relationship at the time that he died, right?
Yeah, we both were. We'd been separated for a few years. We didn't live that far from each other. He was at my house pretty often. It was kind of like a revolving door. He came over. There was no question about it. He would just come over. So, was
he hogtied as well as tasered?
He was. And sorry if I'm not so open about it. We're still in the court proceedings of it, and that I'm limited on things that I'm allowed to say.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to, because you see, we've got Thomas Purdy, who was hogtied. We've got Michael Barrera, who was tasered. But here we have Christopher Murphy, who was hogtied and tasered.
That's correct. So what I know of what has happened is he was coming home from wherever he was. So he got in an argument with his girlfriend, and he left. And on his way home, it was pouring down rain. Something happened. He wrecked his vehicle. It overturned and caught fire, and he self-ejected himself. So he got out of the vehicle, and he was kind of like roaming on the highway. The highway patrol came upon him, and they said that they tried to get him to the shoulder of the road, but he kept saying, "My wife and kid are in the car," and wanted to go back to the vehicle. That he did that several times, and the officer began to get frustrated with him and grabbed him by his arm and swung him around. And when he did that, it kind of pulled the officer and Chris into the roadway. So they kicked his feet out from underneath him, dropping him to the ground, and then he struggled. So they put handcuffs on him, and then he really struggled. So they tased him. I'm not sure at what point they hogtied him, but two of the officers deployed their tasers in the front part of his neck and shoulder, and the other one did it in the back of his neck and shoulder. And so, yeah, he was hogtied when the fire department came there.
And I mean, I suppose for most of us who follow police brutality and unlawful killing and killed by cop particular stories, 9 times out of 10, one of the things that we often say is, well, instead of pulling out the gun, maybe they should have, just tasered him because they've got alternatives. But some of these alternatives are just are beginning to come across as just as lethal, depending on how and when they're used. Now, I do know that with Thomas Purdy and Michael Barrera, there were drug-related allegations, and I'm going to come to that very shortly. But was your ex Christopher, did he have a drug dependency or addiction?
He did not have any dependency or addiction. However, the initial reports that I received from the hospital state that he had no sign of any drug, alcohol in his system at all. But a police report, well, I don't even know if it's a police report, a report that was released from the district attorney's office states that he had a 0.02 NL of a substance found in methamphetamines in his system. They're trying to say that was a deadly amount, but it's not. His is not a deadly amount. It's the same amount that we found in over-the-counter medications. Ibuprofen is one. And that's doing an extensive drug test on somebody of their blood. In the report, it says that the test was done on some of his blood.
It's funny you should say that, because on the other two that we have, on Michael Barrera and Thomas Purdy, they both alleged to have been under the influence of meth as well. So you're saying that the traces that were found in your ex was 0.02, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I just want to go quickly to Christina Murphy. Did you ever get, sorry, not Christina Murphy, to Marissa Barrera, did you ever get a report as to what was in your brother's system and to what extent, how much?
You know what, we have, there's so much stuff that we haven't received, and there are minimal things that we have. I've looked at these reports. It's been really hard for me to try to figure out the amounts, but that's something that I noted right now as Christina was speaking. Like they do say that there was some substance in my brother's system, but we went through a couple of different attorneys, and I've pressed these type of issues on them. Please check his records. Please check these amounts. Different things like that. And we didn't get much help from the last two attorneys. We just switched to a new one just last week, who are actually going to thoroughly go through the records and stuff, because before it was me doing what I can. So that's something that I hope we can be more clear on shortly.
Well, I do think it's important because, you know, with Christina having the actual dosage that was found in his body as 0.02, it'd be very interesting to find out how that compares with what they claim to have found in your brothers. Now, let me quickly flip to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, in hearing that, methamphetamine seems to be one of the common denominators between all three, irrespective of how they died, whether it was tasered, hogtied, or hogtied and tasered. Did you ever get the report as to explain and confirm what was found in your brother's body and how much content?
I can't speak to the level, but they did say there was methamphetamine in his system. However, the autopsy, the medical examiner did state in the autopsy that Thomas would not have experienced cardiopulmonary arrest when he did if it wasn't for the restraint and physical force applied to him.
Okay. So in turn, and I'm going to ask the question to Anne-Marie first and then Marissa secondly, was you aware of your brother using methamphetamine or drugs of any sort?
No. Mm-mm.
And how about you, Marissa?
You know what? That was something that was very shocking to me also because I was very close to my brother and I would talk to him every day. So that was really hard for me to believe. Yeah. So, you know, I'm really, now that's something I'm really like, the amount is very important to know because how Christina mentioned also the amount that he had in him or could be found in, you know, over the counters. But no, I was not aware of any type of methamphetamine use.
See, it's very,
I think it's important.
Go, carry on.
I think it's important for me to mention in my brother's case that the particular jail where my brother died, where they smothered him to death while hogtied, that less than 60 days before they killed my brother, they killed another man, Nico Smith, in the same exact manner, except he wasn't hogtied. They put him face down, prone restraint, and he died. And then less than a year after my brother died, they killed another man the same exact way, face down, smothered by multiple deputies.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, there are 3 wrongful death lawsuits filed against that prison for very similar ways of ending someone's life. But don't you guys all find it funny that all 3 of you are unaware of drug addictive dependency related behaviors with your lost loved ones, and yet all 3 apparently were found to be under, or suggested that they were under the influence at the time of their deaths, yet only one of you have got the substance amount that was in the body, which is 0.02, which is non-lethal. And again, the way that the media and law enforcement tries to blacken the name of the person's life they've taken in order to give the community a different perspective and justify their kill. Do you not find that very, very, you know, it's a consistent line that they throw, isn't it? And is it not one that you guys should attack?
Absolutely.
So I think that in the report it says, you know, the 0.02 NL, and then it also states like the cause of his death would be the car accident, the exertion from the struggle with the police officers, and it says the lethal amount. So it's very conflicting in that report. And one of my lawyers that are on the case, she used to be a chief coroner, and so she's kind of concerned on like why it's even written the way it's written, and that's why it's hard for my case to go through right now, because they're saying that Chris did not tell the officers that he was in pain or that tasing him would have caused, you know, death or hurt him. So they're not really being found accountable based on that fact that he didn't express that he was hurt, which makes no sense to me, because it's common sense that, I mean, he obviously his adrenaline was already through the roof at that moment. He'd been in a car accident. Why would you tase him, once, or let alone that many times? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Here's the thing. So the reports that I've read says that your brother was driving the wrong way, down a carriageway, whatever it was. There was a collision with another vehicle. His vehicle appears to have run off the road somehow, caught fire. He was also claiming that his partner and child was in the vehicle as well, right?
He was, yes. So that's what he kept trying to go back to the car for, when they grabbed him and turned him around and dropped him to the ground. However, there's no other vehicle. They have not produced another vehicle. They're saying he was driving the wrong way. The fire department's report states that he wasn't going the wrong way. There was no sign of it. And there is no other vehicle. And the police released a partial incident report at the CHP office, and it just is basic information. And it just says that the woman in the vehicle that was hit had a 3-year-old, I believe, and she left the scene after talking to police because she was fine. Which, if you were hit head on, I'm sure, like, you wouldn't be allowed to leave the scene, especially with the 3-year-old.
No. So
I don't believe that. I just don't believe that there was another car involved.
If he was driving, go ahead.
I think it's interesting that the police can tell the media whatever they want, but I just have an example when my father, who has been pretty quiet, throughout this whole thing, because he did have litigation going on, but he did have a Facebook page, and he had actually written, what would you do if the police killed your child? And the Reno City Attorney, Carl Hall, actually, during my father's settlement hearing, took that Facebook post and blew it up on a big screen and tried to tell my father that he could be arrested for making threats. But there's no censorship when it comes to what the police can give out to the public.
No, there isn't. Here's the thing. We have, on the grounds of what we started here last week, and it would be very important that you guys go and search for a new Facebook page that we've launched called Just Do Justice. And on that Facebook page, you'll find a group of people who are working hard to give people a support network in order for them to get the support necessary for them to challenge the system that so wrongly re-victimize families who are going through a very difficult situation. Now,
had I not demanded the videos from the police, which they did finally release to me, their narrative was that my brother was acting crazy and talking crazy and wasn't making any sense. And they never said they put him in a hog tie. They never said that 4 deputies put him face down. They just said that he was talking crazy, and all of a sudden he stopped breathing up at the jail. And the police never called us. My brother was we live in Boston. My brother was laying in that hospital alone. Even though he was brain dead, he was alone for 2 days. The hospital actually had some software where they were able to locate his next of kin. The police told the hospital, we don't want him. So they released him from custody almost immediately. So we were fortunate enough to get to see my brother for the last time, unlike some of the other ladies.
Anne-Marie, I'm really sorry we've taken so long to get back to you. It wasn't deliberate. But as you hear these ladies tell the stories, Christina of her ex, Marissa of her brother, and the drug-related connection, what is your awareness or knowledge of any information that was released in regards to the content of what was in your brother's body at the time of his death?
I just know that they reported to the newspaper that, and the newspaper headline would kind of sensationalize it, of course. Man high on methamphetamine dies while hogtied. But as far as the only thing I've seen is just that statement from the autopsy, which was filed in the complaint that my father's lawyer had filed against them.
Wow. But in all the years that you've known your brother, we've just confirmed that you never knew him to be of a drug dependency or drug addictive lifestyle.
No.
So how does that leave you and the family feeling that you've lost your brother, they've taken his life, and now they're trying to make him look like something that you don't know him to be?
I feel that regardless if he did have methamphetamine in his system or not, he was entitled to medical attention. I just feel like three agencies failed my brother when they all had the opportunity to save him. The Peppermill Casino, where he was a paying guest at. Then Reno police, who should have gotten an ambulance. The device that they used on my brother is called the RIP hobble restraint. And every single page of it says, do not use to hogtie a human being, can cause sudden in-custody death syndrome. But they chose to do that. They chose to put him in a hogtie and not get a medical attention. And it's funny because I've reached out to the agency that actually makes that particular device, and they were very on the defensive, I'll say. Didn't want to acknowledge there was any correlation between their device and people dying, because my brother isn't the only one that's died from being put in the RIP hobble restraint, just like Chris and Mike aren't the only ones that have died after being tased.
How many times was he tasered, if you can recall?
I don't know how many times. My brother wasn't tasered. He was just hogtied for 40 minutes.
Your brother was hogtied.
Right. I feel like they want to use the throw out a drug issue, when the real issue is the tasers, the excessive force, the hog tie, using it inappropriately. Anything they can do to detract from their actions and culpability is what they will do.
Agreed, and that's the reason why I was asking the question, because how does that leave you feeling that you're trying to deal with the loss of a loved one, and then they're throwing this red herring right in the middle of it?
It leaves me angry because I feel like we already have an uphill battle against people who are blinded by the blue light and don't ever believe that, even after they see videos, they don't ever, well, there had to be something more to it. And that gives them the something more to it that in their mind excuses the police's behavior for some reason. And it leaves me angry, upset. I mean, how you never actually have a chance to properly grieve when you're every single day fighting for justice.
You know, that's so true, because when people ask me about Chris, it's like the first thing I have to say is he wasn't high or drunk, and I shouldn't have to say that. That shouldn't be something where I feel like people just go to automatically based on certain, things that have been put out there. And I've read horrible comments being put on even my own Facebook page, on pictures of my children, well, I shouldn't have chosen father for my children who was a drug addict, and just mean things, which it's like, he wasn't. I mean, he was not one. So, and that's when somebody says it, and then, it's just like everybody jumps on that bandwagon, and well, he shouldn't have been high, then that wouldn't have happened. And it's not fair. It's like,
well, the whole point being is that now you're now defending an issue which has got actually nothing to do with the real reason why your brother's no longer alive.
Exactly.
It's a total distraction. So rather than you having to deal with the matter, fight the matter, defend or challenge the way that they've handled your brother, you're now trying to defend his integrity or his memory. And
that's something. Oh, sorry, guys. That's something that I totally agree with, and not just us three. I know both of these stories as well, and these ladies, but it's always like that. What did he do? Or there's something more. They just they automatically just believe that they're bad people. So we're over here trying to not only defend our families, but other ones. And something that I say is like, how are we supposed to heal when we're being stabbed in the heart every day by these new ones that are happening daily? It's very difficult to see other families go through exactly what we went through. And it's like, we as families, like a lot of the families, like we try to connect because it's like we're holding on like by string by everybody's like our own tragedies. We're the only ones who know truly how it feels. So it's a very difficult situation, and we see it happening not just to, brothers and, husbands, but we also see it happening to kids, like, 16-year-olds. There's an 18-year-old just killed in my town just 2 weeks ago. And, it's really horrific. I feel like I relive it each time when I see it happening to a new family.
I mean, losing your loved one because they've been tasered is no different to losing your loved one because they've been shot. They're still being killed at the hands of law enforcement, and for whatever reason, law enforcement have not handled the killing of your loved one in a meaningful way, and that's what leaves the sad taste in most people's mouths. Is that your loved one is not being treated with dignity or respect. So, you've got on the one hand you're dealing with the loss and the grieving. And on the other hand, you've actually, tried to defend their memory. And it's a very difficult position to find yourself in because it's not giving you the appropriate time or space to grieve, right?
I agree with that too. And I have 3 children, and only one of them have cried twice. And it's the hardest thing for me to look at my kids and know that they don't have a dad anymore, and that they don't have any family that's, stuck around, because I've lost my own family. I've lost all my friends because, fighting for justice, nobody wants to be involved in that. And so they've all just abandoned my whole family. So it's what I have in this house is what I have. And that in itself is hard because I'm defending so much, and then I'm having to defend 3 children and understand how they've changed and, where their frustration and anger comes from. Because we don't have answers. I've never seen the video, and there is video of the dash cam. We haven't received that. They won't release it. I don't know what his last moments were or what he said, and I want to know, but then I don't want to know. It's like I can only just imagine what he went through. And there are nights that I go out where he was killed and I will sleep out there because I feel like he is still there.
That's a very emotional and painful place to be. But with Anne-Marie has the video. And I just want to switch across to Anne-Marie because you have the video, and that must be
right.
Every time you watch that, every time you see that, that must be a horrifying experience, reliving.
That's for sure. Yeah, I honestly tried to avoid watching the video now. I do share it for others to see because it's important for others to know what happened. But the first time I watched it, that was the first time that everything come out that no, they didn't start CPR right away, that no crazy talk isn't begging for your life, begging that you need an ambulance, begging that they're going to kill you. I was literally screaming at the computer. The part that really, there's so many parts of it that bother me, but when they say, what's this guy's name? And I'm screaming, his name is Thomas. His name is Thomas. Just he wasn't a human being to them. They didn't even know his name. I had to see the video because I needed to know the truth, and I'm thankful that the video exists because they would have been able to. There would have been no way to contradict what they initially told us. That he just talking crazy and stopped breathing.
If you watch the video, he appears to be more afraid than anything else.
Right. Yep. He was extremely paranoid. He thought somebody was trying to kill him. Even still at the jail, he said, "Get that gun off of me." It was clear that he was in a mental health crisis. Not only that, but a medical crisis at that point.
And how do you feel about the fact that law enforcement officers who have the authority and privilege and honor to serve and protect treats an individual with a medical disability with such disrespect and disregard?
I'm disgusted. So many of them had the opportunity to say, "Hey, this guy needs an ambulance. He's got to go." He was the ground when they actually lift him up and put him in the mega mover out of the Sally port. The ground was soaking wet. 3 days later, when we got to the hospital, my brother's pants, socks, and sneakers were completely wet still with sweat from his body. His sneakers soaking wet with sweat. There was a puddle under him of sweat when they lifted him up off the ground in the Sally port to bring him into the jail cell. And they all chose to ignore that.
You and your family has obviously had to live with your brother as he went through various different points of mental health related crisis throughout his life. Were there any times where he was conducting himself in such a way where you were in fear for either yours or your children's lives, or?
Never.
He never displayed a violent tendency or the potential to harm or injure.
No, it was paranoia. Whenever he had an episode, it would be paranoia that he thought somebody was trying to get him. The U.S. Marshals, he used to say, were coming to get him.
And Marissa.
And not for any logical reason. It's not because he had any open cases. It's just a mental illness. It's nothing he could control. And some people with mental illnesses don't believe that, they have a problem.
Well, let me be honest with you. I kind of supported my brother for many years, and one of my brothers, my younger brother in particular, suffers with a mental health related issue, in fact paranoid schizophrenia, and has done for many years, and his paranoid thoughts were very similar to your brother's. He thought that law enforcement and every other agency was out to get him, and that CCTV cameras were put there specifically just to watch him. When they put cameras in the estate where he was living, he believed that they were there just to watch him, and he thought his neighbors, whether they were upstairs, downstairs, or next door, were positioned there deliberately to keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
But he was never violent. He was never harmful. Unfortunately for us, my brother's still alive. But over here in the UK, the treatments and the way that people with mental health related issues are treated are so different to how it is in America. And we've had this on the show on many occasions, because over here in the UK we have what's called the crisis team. And the crisis team, and I do believe that you do now have something quite similar in some states in America, but not in all. But over here in the UK, if you're dealing with somebody with a mental health related issue, the police is not your first port of call. The crisis team come out first, and the police actually let the crisis team go and deal with the issue first. And only if the crisis team cannot calm the situation down, cannot bring the individual under control, does the police actually come in and step in. Now,
that makes sense.
Is it shocking that the law enforcement, who unfortunately are the only agency available to go and deal with these types of issues, have yet to undergo any type of training that will give them an understanding of how to approach this in a less provocative manner?
That's my biggest thing right now with the highway patrol is, like, 95% of the time they're the ones that are the first to arrive in an automobile accident, and to not be trained properly to be treating somebody in one of those accidents is beyond me. I think that they should definitely be trained that way, and to have the right to choose who you do CPR on and who you don't. I don't think that that's fair either. They're only required to call for assistance. I mean, that's frustrating to me.
Okay, but with you, Christina, your husband was. Hang on a minute. Hang on 1 second. 1 second. Sorry, my wife is trying to get hold of my phone charger. Sorry about that. I never go into studios without my charger in case my phone goes dead, but she obviously can't find hers and now wants to use mine. Right, okay. So when we're talking about mental health related issues, right, are we surprised that even after all of this time, there is still no answer, there is still no professional support to deal with people who are going through a particular issue of mental health crisis, and that you've still got the police who are going in trigger happy and in a manner that's likely to cause more harm to the individual who's having that crisis than bringing the situation under control?
It's disgusting. That's something I tell people these days: do not call the cops. I've met a lot of families and read all these stories of these families who they want to help. You think that the cops are going to be there to help you, and you think they whether it's that they want to hurt themselves or they're going through a crisis, and then for the cops to come in and kill them, like, it's very hurtful. And I know that is something that strains the family, like, because there's going to be that guilt, like, why did they do that? Why did they call the cops? But it's always, at this point, I feel like all the families can do is, remind, like, other people and share that word. We do not call the cops on your family, on a mental crisis. It's not safe.
But that's the most strangest request that some person can actually authorize to say, because as children, as individuals, we were raised to respect law and order and those that were privileged with the honor of administering it. And yet we can't trust them in our communities. We can't trust them with our loved ones. And we can't trust them with those who are actually having a crisis of their own. Now, what kind of community is that to be living in? Surely it's time that we start to challenge law enforcement at the level it needs to be challenged on, rather than sitting down. I mean, I think sometimes we can pick the wrong fight. We need to find the right battle to fight, I think. And I think there's too many of us fighting the wrong battle. We're looking for justice when what we actually need is change. There needs to be a change.
I agree with you very much. And, it's been since, February 8th of last year. So it's been a long time. And I've went through my phases where I'm going out to rallies and I'm going out to protests, or I'm reaching out to families, or I'm sharing our stories, sharing other people's stories. But it's very, very draining, and it's hurtful to relive it. But that's why I've kind of taken a step back. Okay, there needs to be a better angle, because what we're doing, like what's been going on, it's obviously, not change hasn't been coming. Like, their numbers are still piling up daily. So I totally agree with you right there.
Marissa.
Yes.
Your brother, he was also found to have been under the influence of methamphetamine, but also going through a mental health crisis. So, had you ever witnessed him being violent, aggressive, confrontational, problematic in such a way where you thought that either you or your family members were at risk?
You know what? It's still something that sounds funny to me to hear and to talk about. Oh, Michael was had a mental illness, because I'm like, I grew up with this dude. Like, if he had a mental illness, maybe I do too, because I don't feel like he was any different. But at the time, we had 2 months prior, my uncle, he had tragically died, and we were close to him. That was my dad's brother. So I think our whole family was kind of going through stuff. He committed suicide. He hung himself. Like, my grandma and my uncle found him like that. That had just happened. So, our family, and we lost our stepfather when we were years back when we were really young. So, the death, it was hard on everybody. But as far as, your question, no. And it's still, to me, I still can't really say myself. My brother was mentally ill because he didn't have, not that there's anything wrong with it, but, I had never experienced that with him. So. Yeah.
And this is really the sad indictment of most of the stories that we get to hear and read about, especially on this show and with the people that we connect with, is that we're not talking about people who are career criminal activists who constant problem makers and troublemakers in the community, always rowdy and fighting and causing problems with the community and with the police. Every single one of these cases that we are looking at and we are talking about are standalone individuals who have no history of a violence or a criminal relationship with the local community, law enforcement, and yet they're lying 6 feet in the ground. Their lives have come to a very sad end, and still their loved ones are trying to keep their dignity intact. Now, where do you guys see you going from here? Anne-Marie, for example, it's your brother, you've got your life to get on with, you've got children, you've got all these other things to do, but here you are, you're still in the middle of this battle, just trying to get justice for Thomas. So where are you with that, and where do you see that going?
So I focused getting justice and change in Reno, even though I'm from Boston, because those are the agencies that killed my brother. Of course, what I've been doing, and I feel like they're trying to silence me in any way they can, I actually send public comments into the county commissioners, informing them of what happened to my brother at the jail, that they're responsible for, that they create the budget for. I send them comments that I find online from people about the treatment that they've experienced by Reno police, brutality from the police, excessive force, denying medical treatment up at the jail. And those comments are supposed to be published in the meeting minute agenda. And they've told me that their legal counsel has told them, because I'm sending them through email, they don't have to put them in the minutes of the agenda. And I just feel like that's the way they're trying to silence me. They don't like the message that I'm sending, which is shocking, because they should want that change. They shouldn't want any more lawsuits on their hands. They shouldn't want people dying up at the jail or at the hands of police in their community, because the reality is it could be any of them. It could be their son or daughter, those county commissioners. It could happen to any one of them, because like Marissa said, just shocked, that they're saying her brother had a mental illness, but just shocked at the whole, that my brother was killed by the police. In general, in a million years, none of us could ever have imagined this. And we fight for justice, and change, not just for ourselves, but so that no other family has to go through this.
And that's a good reason to keep on fighting. Christina.
Yes.
Do you feel? Do you honestly? Do you feel like it's your duty for your children to preserve and protect the memory of Christopher? And how much further do you think you have to go in order to go ahead?
Yeah, I think there's a long way to go. I've just realized you cannot fight justice with justice. The justice system has to change before anything else is going to change. And I guess understanding that is kind of giving me my curve on like where to go, what to do. I can't be yelling and demanding, things to be done. It's got to be done a certain way. I definitely try to keep his memory alive. I talk about him often with my kids. Some days it's really hard, and some days they just aren't ready for it, or they'll just not want me to do something. My younger son, he wants to wear clothing with his dad's picture on it, and last year that's the only thing he would wear. It's
wow.
It's not a day goes by that I don't do something, whether it's passing out flyers or telling his story or crying about it. I mean, it's something I don't think that I will give up on until I know exactly what happened and that justice is served and that the law changes. There's children out there that they're affected and nobody cares. You know, dads are gone and kids are just left to be whatever. You know, nobody thinks about them. It's not their fault that any of this has happened. They didn't ask for it. You know, they shouldn't have to be stuck with, you know, my dad's gone and they don't have anybody.
And I take it you kind of still feel like it's very difficult for you to move on, right?
Oh yeah, it's most definitely difficult. Like I said, I go out there and sleep sometimes because I feel like I just can't, I can't grasp the thought of him actually being gone. I feel like he's just gonna walk down the road and like he's fine, or he's just gonna come in my door. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my entire life.
And I think you're going to be able to find out it's probably going to be the hardest thing that you'll ever have to do in your life. So what next for you? Where do you see yourself going next with this campaign or?
I honestly don't know. I do have kind of.
I'm sorry. I'm really not sure who's doing that, but that's a lot of noise coming through on our microphones. Sorry, carry on.
No, it's okay. I've taken a step back in the aspect of not being so persistent about it, not letting it consume my life, my day, because I do have 3 kids that I see it starting to consume them as well, and I want them to be focused on the normal things that they should be focused on, rather than just, you know, every cop is bad and, you know, does this one know the one that hurt my dad? I kind of just left it in my attorney's hands right at the moment to kind of get us closer in the right way, because I don't want it to get like thrown out or something. You know, I don't want to rush it, because if I rush it, then something might be missed, and I definitely don't want it to be missed.
Are you satisfied with the progress and the direction that your attorney is taking?
No, absolutely not. I feel like there's more could be done. Any of their evidence or things that they were able to get is stuff that I've provided. The Highway Patrol has not responded. Their roles are a little bit different than the sheriff, so they do things differently, and they have thrown every little curveball in there to withhold any information or make us file different paperwork. And so we're right now in the spot of we're waiting for a judge to and it's been like this for the last 9 months, waiting for a judge to decide if he's going to subpoena a certain person, and that's where we're at.
What about yourself, Marissa? What sort of legal representation have you got, and what direction is that taking for you?
So, just right after it happened, we obtained an attorney out of Sacramento area. And just like Christina said, so we had that lawyer, and then we had another set of lawyers 9 months later, and then we just got a different set of lawyers. So the first 2, like she said, I literally gave them everything. Like, I handed them everything. I did the work, and they haven't done nothing. So I'm really feeling like a lot of these attorneys aren't doing their jobs. And there's so much money at stake. You know, there could be so much money at stake. Maybe that's why they do it. I don't know, but we care more for the truth, for them to get the evidence, for them to do their part. And I just know there's a lot of paperwork and files that I personally try to help file for, you know, to get, and they tell us, no, your attorney has to. So we'll be around 2 years before we know it. And there's still so much that could have been obtained by our attorneys that they haven't. So with our new set, I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping they actually do the work. I recently started, I had taken some time off from college, and I recently started back up. I happened to, ironically, 2 of my professors are ex-cops. So the first day I almost want to walk out, because that's a trigger for me. And one of them, she was the ex-cop gone criminal defense attorney, and she actually speaks on things like this. And it just made me realize how much more that these attorneys are not doing their job. And
Sorry, Marissa. I didn't mean to cut you off real quick. My attorney, she used to be an ex-cop as well, and so she gives a lot of insight on like things that they do and stuff like that. It makes it like shocking, to go from a police officer to a defense attorney. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you know what? I just decided, like, I've learned so much in these last 3 weeks that there's so many things that I'm noting everything down, and I'm just keeping an open mind right now because like I'm just trying. I need to learn now because I'm feeling like these families, all of us, how the attorneys treated us, and how I've seen, it happen to so many people. Like who really is there for us? Like if our attorney's not there for us, if they're not doing their job, well, what are we supposed to do? I mean, I could look up and Google stuff all day and look at the laws, but that's why I'm just feeling that I need to be educated more, not just for myself, but for future families. And someone's got to do it, and I don't see many good attorneys out there.
My father filed a lawsuit, and I felt like his attorney did pressure him to settle the lawsuit rather than his reasoning to my father was that it would cost a lot of money to take it to trial, but that's why the attorney was hired. Money will never bring our loved ones back, but as Marissa said, to have the evidence come out, because it is hard to obtain things without that.
Most of the people that we talk to are never interested in the money. It's not about the money. It's more about the truth. And you guys, all three of you have two things in common. One, you've lost a love. In fact, you have more than two things in common. You've all lost a loved one dearly. All been done in really very suspicious circumstances, and thirdly, they've been lied upon. Their characters have been shred to pieces, and finally, and I think most importantly, and I think my dear friend Jonathan Newton pointed this out when we did the show last week, you're all badly represented.
Yes.
And one of the things that Jonathan didn't point out last week was that most people don't realize that they need to get somebody who is specially expert in the area that they're looking for. It's not just about getting an attorney. You can speak to our friends like Yolanda McNair, who will tell you that her attorney was really a waste of time. In fact, most of the people that we've spoken to, the one thing that they all have in common is that in their pursuit of justice, right, they've all been badly represented. So it's important that people really pay attention to who they're trying to get on board. And I suppose when we're in the middle of this crisis that we're in, the last thing that we're thinking about is to check out the credentials of an attorney who's either signposted to us or is flagged up in our direction or contacts us and agrees to represent us, especially when we know just how difficult it is to get the necessary support and resources needed for such a battle. And sometimes when the attorney turns out, it's almost as if we believe it's a godsend. Fantastic. Now we've got somebody on our side who's fighting for us. But
I did some research. I did some research on my attorney, and I am pleased with my attorneys 100%. I'm just not pleased with the direction it's going and how slow it's going because the way the law is with the highway patrol. I see like so many instances where you have the sheriff or the police department and things are released and it's totally different, but the highway patrol, their rules are off. It's like they make their own rules, and so that's what makes it difficult. There's some things in the case. Chris had another child, and so that's getting that mother on board with the lawsuit is what's the challenge. She doesn't want to be involved in it, but she won't say she doesn't want to be involved in it. So that's our problem right now. We can't move forward until that key piece is kind of there.
That's understandable. We're just really coming up towards the end of the show, and it's amazing just how quickly 2 hours goes. And we really, once again, we apologize for the lateness in getting Christina involved, but we fully understand the difficulties of modern technology and how difficult these things can become. But we're just glad that we was able to get you on the show, and thankful that you were able to share your story with us. But Anne-Marie, let's just quickly flip to you. How are you going to pursue going forward? What's your next steps? What can anybody do to help support you moving forward in trying to get justice for Thomas?
There is a Facebook page, Reno Cop Watch. They've been really supportive of Thomas's case, just sharing the story, supporting other families, because this isn't just about my brother Thomas. And every morning when I wake up, I realize that we're all in this together. We all, like you said, we all have to find a common focus, a cause to focus on, not all over the place. We all need to unite. Yeah, I don't know.
But you will keep on fighting, no doubt.
Well, actually, yeah, in June because Thomas was killed in Reno and I live in Boston, but in June I was able to help organize a protest, and myself and my son flew out to Reno, and we were part of a protest in front of the federal courthouse. Myself, my son, and Pete, the guy who runs the Reno Cop Watch page, we went down to the Reno police station. I had a big 8-foot banner made with a picture of my brother on life support, and just words about how they hogtied him and killed him. And every officer that walked by, I would stop. And some of them were polite. Some of them didn't want to hear what I said. But, I let them know that hog ties kill, that my brother was in a mental health crisis and they had an opportunity to save his life. I will say Reno PD did stop using that rip hobble on individuals, so I feel that's a small victory, but of course they have found another device to wrap people in, and I've read about that device, and people have died in that as well. But I'm just going to keep fighting, sending my letters to the county commissioners, speaking out as much as I can, and supporting everybody else.
Well, the one thing that you guys have in common, again, is that your loved ones all were going through a mental health crisis, and it's apparent that law enforcement right across the state, because none of you come from the same place, and yet you're all going through the same problem, which shows that there is a widespread issue of the law enforcement's inability to appropriately manage people going through mental health crisis, especially when the police are being called out for a disturbance or a noise nuisance or something that's pretty petty in comparison. If we were talking about somebody that was in the middle of a rape or a murder or a bank robbery, and they were being really, you could understand them having to use that excessive force. But we're not talking about people that are in the midst of pursuing a criminal activity, and yet there seems to be no reasoning, let alone justification, for the excessive force that has been used in order to subdue or detain them in any way, shape or form. All three of your loved ones died in terrible and horrific ways that are totally undignified for any human being to have to suffer as far as a loss of life is concerned, let alone the people that they've left behind, to mourn them, to be able to see that this is how they died without a decent explanation. And I think, my heart goes out to all three of you and all those others that we've not yet spoken to on this show who have died in this similar fashion, whether it be by the trigger-happy gun of a racist police officer, or the unreasonable behavior of an officer with a taser or something else in his hand, and the inability to deal with people that are going through their own crisis, because your brothers and your ex, as far as Christina was concerned, they were going through an illness because it's an illness. They were sick, and what they needed was help. And instead, they were met with brutal force, which ended their lives. I'm not sure how any of you will recover or find peace from this, apart from in the knowledge and the understanding that we have a God that's that gives us comfort in our time of need. But my hats go off to all of you. Is there anything that any of you would like to add just before we round off and close up?
I just want to thank the ladies that I have come in contact with, because without their encouragement and the words, I know they've seen some of my darkest days that I posted on Facebook, and without those, I don't know how I would even be here today. So,
amen. Support network are absolutely important. Marissa, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I feel the same as Christina said. If I wouldn't have found the support through, it all is internet based because we're spread out. It would be very hard because I think most of the families, if the victim is fortunate, they may have one family member or multiple that will speak out and fight. But, it makes me think about all those victims that don't have anybody advocating for them. So I am thankful for I refer to them as my justice families because they fight for their families. But in the end, we're fighting not just for our loved ones, because it's hard for me to say that, my brother won't ever get justice. He's never going to, he won't bring him back. But, what we do is, to prevent this from continuing on and how it has been. So thank you, ladies.
And finally, Anne-Marie, is there anything that you'd like to add before we leave?
I just echo their same sentiments, and it was really a lonely place before I connected with a lot of these people, and I have to thank Rick Hill, who is a big activist, and he has connected so many families. And honestly, before he reached out to me, I wasn't connected with anybody, and it's just been a great, helpful support system to have, and I'm so appreciative of it.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank all of you ladies for sharing your stories, giving us the privilege and the honor of sharing your stories live on World Jam Global Radio and Issues Today. Look forward to any updates that you lot might have, and here you are. We've welcomed you into the family. You're now part of the Issues Today family, and please feel free to stay in contact and update us at any time. We'll look forward to bringing up any updates and inviting you guys back so that you are able to tell us of any more issues or victories that come about from the work that you're doing. If there's anything else that we can do to support you, signpost you to where there's additional help and support available, please feel free to contact me privately, and we can take this up separately on direct message, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But for now, Anne-Marie, Grant, Marissa Barrera, and Christina Murphy, we thank you for sharing your stories on World Jam Global Radio's Issues Today. We're out of here. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Imperial Lounge presents an icon.
Reggae dancehall by the beach. To be held at Imperial Lounge, 2 to 14 High Street, Margate Seafront, Kent, CT9 118. To be held on the first Saturday of each month. Your host DJ Matt. Also rotating DJs, Roddy Boone, DJ Happy,
And Younger General.
Doors open 8 p.m. till late. Free entry all night. Music policy, reggae, dancehall, and a touch of soul. On the first Saturday of each month. Reggae dancehall by the beach. At the Imperial Lounge Margate. Do remember, you can also get VIP and Shisha booking. More info on the World Jam Global website. That's www.worldjamglobal.com. Also www.imperialloungemargate.co.uk.
See you there.
It's the right thing you doing. Rebellious like 1, 2, 3, swing it.
Do you have an old sound tape or your favorite cassette tape that you want converted to CD or MP3 format? Do you need a demo CD, radio ad, a DJ, or even a sound system for your wedding, birthday, or special occasion? Then why not get in contact with KTR Records at 07931 152 448, or check out our website on www.ktrrecords.com. We have been in business since 2004 and also undertake community projects. So for your remixes, dubplates and all your sound editing needs, why not contact KTR Records, official sponsor of World Jam Global Radio. KTR Records, coming your way.
Do you like music like this?
Great music all the time.
Or like this?
The music you love.
Maybe this.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
Or life track like this.
Especially where human life is concerned. Surely, sooner or later, people will realize that lives actually matter.
Then you're in the right place. Keep it locked to World Jam Global, where music is harmony.
Music 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, you're a World Jam. Hotter than them.
See live schedule.
You see, it's here. You see. New feature coming from World Jam Global Radio in 2018. World Jam Global Top 10. To vote for your favorite artist, go to twitter.com/World Jam Global or facebook.com/World Jam Global. So pick the right track where you want to have in your car, or your house, or rock.